Well, I have to put my jacket on, right? Like Mr. Rogers, I have to have my sweater. I have an identity crisis without my jacket on. You're not believing that, are you? Good. I hope not, because if I thought I had to have a jacket everywhere I went, I'd look like Batman when I ride my motorcycle because it'd be flapping in the wind, and that just wouldn't be right. I got a letter when I was in the Air Force, and I had just been reassigned. In fact, in the progression, I went from San Antonio at Lackland Air Force Base out to Reese Airplane Patch, where there were like 18 people on the base. Well, it's not quite that small, but it's really small. And then I went from there to Honduras on what they call a TDY, temporary duty assignment. And I was there for almost 6 months, which meant that I couldn't go to another base for 2 years. And if I didn't just keep extending and stay in Honduras 6 months at a time until my service term was up, then I had to extend my military service to be able to take another assignment. So I got an offer to go to England in orders, and they said, for you to take these orders, to accept this order, you'll have to extend another 6 months and stay in. And so then you'll go and spend 2 years in England. And I said, great, that's awesome. Well, I got a little 30-day leave between leaving Honduras and going to England. And so I went and saw my girlfriend, and we spent some time together and had a great time. Little did I know that once I landed in England, it would be another 6 to 8 weeks before I would get a single phone call, get a single letter, get anything from her after all the time that we'd spent together, because she lived in Lubbock at the time that I met her. And then we kept in touch the whole time I was in Honduras. We had unbelievable phone bills. And then, we got to spend 30 days together. And so we were really growing in our relationship. And then I get to England and nothing. Well, it wasn't her. It was the U.S. Postal Service delivering the letters. And so by the time I got that first letter from her, I was so hyped to get that letter. I was so excited to see a letter from her. And there were like 3 of them that came at the same time. And she was a writer, so they were 3 or 4 pages thick and handwritten on both sides. I was so excited. And as I was walking home from the post office back to my barracks, probably a mile tops, along the way there's the motor pool. And out in front of the motor pool, they have a nice little patch of grass. Probably the only really nice cultivated piece of grass on the whole base at Lake and Heath at the time. There was a lot of it that was getting there, but it was just that one was just like Yard of the Month Club, right? And they had this sprinkler on a hose, the kind that just goes and it arches to one side and arches to the other, and it's got the big fan of spray. And as I walked by, I noticed that it was sprinkling not just onto the sidewalk, but like halfway out into the street as well. And then it would go back, and it would take its sweet time going all the way back, and it would spray all the way over to the building, and then it would take its sweet time and come back and spray all the way to the street. They had the water pressure on a little high. But as I approached it, I realized if I wait till the drips are just like straight up, I can walk by, and although my feet might get wet, I'm not going to get soaked. It's not going to be like a rainstorm or anything. So I don't have to walk in the street and take a chance of getting in trouble. I can walk on the sidewalk if I just wait for it to go by. So I proceeding to read my letter, like most people do with text messages now, right? So I've got my letter in my hand and I'm reading it. And I wait for the sprinkler to get to straight up. And as I'm walking by, I'm like right in the middle, where it's equal distance to run straight through the sprinkler or back up. Instead of the sprinkler going all the way over and spraying the building like it has been doing for hours, it stops. And then it catches. And the little rotating part of the sprinkler that causes it to go over causes it instead to flip over my way. And at a 45-degree angle, it's soaking the sidewalk. Not the grass, not the street, just the sidewalk. And so now it's just as much trouble to run that way out of it as it is to back up that way out of it. I can't really go to the right into the street or the left into the mud. And so all I can do is hustle as fast as I can and hold my letter to my chest. The raindrops from the sprinkler have already caused all the ink to run. And now I'm both frustrated that all of my letters are unreadable and my uniform is soaked head to toe. And for a split second, just maybe 30 seconds tops, I had this image in my head of running over and grabbing that hose about 2 feet from the sprinkler and then just slamming it against the side of the building until there's nothing left of the sprinkler. And in that moment, it was like I heard God laugh, and he said, and what good would that do? I mean, honestly, would it bring the letter back? Well, no. Would it undo your uniform being wet? No. Is there anything good to come of that expression of frustration and anger? Well, nothing other than the fact that I might feel better because I've had a chance to vent my frustration, but probably nothing good to come for my military career or my reputation or my sanity or the way people look at my sanity. If I beat that sprinkler into submission, it's not going to change a thing. But that outburst from me, that could change a lot. And I think that was the first time that I can recall that this quick little thought challenged the reactionary thought that was going on in my head. Now, since that day, that's been, good grief, that's a long time ago. It's been about 20 years, more than 20 years, close to 25 years. Since that day, I've studied mind sciences, and I've studied attitude, and I've studied neurolinguistic programming, and I've studied the reticular activating system in the brain, and I've studied the limbic system of the brain, or what some would call the alligator brain. We as human beings, we have a tendency just to respond to things, to react to things right in the moment. But we don't have to. Because unlike animals that react because their brain generally is wired, I mean literally is wired, to such a way that there's not a delay between what you do to them and how they react to it. Human beings have a time delay where we get to choose between what has happened to us and how we react to it. Do we do exactly what the body wants us to do, or do we have a choice? And the reality is we have a choice. When a frustrating, irritating, annoying stimuli comes, there's an automatic reaction in us. I mean, we feel it right away. We have emotions that respond to that stimulus. And they may be tempting to punch somebody in the face or throw a drink in their face. It may be tempting to use your car and ram right into that idiot next to you that keeps changing lanes into you. Generally speaking, though, there's not much good to come of that. I mean, there's not much good to come for your reputation's sake. There's not much good to come of that from your own sanity's sake. There's not much good to come of that from your leadership skills. Outbursts of anger, well, they are an influence, but that's not the kind of influence that you want to have. That's not the kind of leadership reputation that you want to have. It's not the kind of relationship that you want to build with the people around you. That's not it. That's not what you're looking for. Well, how do we know that? Well, how many of you have an angry boss? How many of you ever worked for someone who loses their cool, raises their voice, has exacting standards that no one else can live up to, but in all honesty, they don't always meet those standards either. They just cover them over well, or they find a way to blame them on somebody else. See, those kinds of qualities in a leader are not the qualities that you want as a leader. They're not the qualities you want to be led by. They're not the qualities that you want to be known for. Now, if you're an expert in your space, if you're a department head, if you're a supervisor, if you're the lead pastor, if you're the senior manager, if you're the supervisor of the field crew, if you're the one that everybody turns to when the question is asked in the room, no matter who made the statement, everybody looks to you for the answer, to make sure that it's right, to make sure that it's on target, then you need to be known as the calm, cool, and collected. You need to be known as the one who takes a minute to think through, who doesn't just react with how they feel. Toddlers do that, right? If you've ever raised a toddler or been around a toddler, I have grandchildren right now that are 2 months, 5 months, 2 years old, 4 years old, 6 years old, 10 years old, and 12 years old. We've been around a couple of toddlers. Of course, I raised four of my own, so I've been around a couple of toddlers. And when you're around a toddler and you tell them, no, you can't have that drink, do they usually go, okay, I'll have this one? No, they don't. They throw a temper tantrum. They've realized from birth up to that point that if they cry, they usually get what they want to, whether that's a diaper change or that's another bottle of milk or that's to be held because they're tired of sitting in their car seat, or that's to have their britches changed. But if they just throw a fit, they get what they want. But how many of us appreciate that even in a toddler? Zero. How many of us appreciate that in a teenager? Less than zero. How many of us appreciate that in a coworker or an employee? No one. And how many of us appreciate that in a boss? Because we've all had them, right? They raise their voice to get you to do what they want you to do. They scream at you and tell you that you've done wrong. I've even encountered, and I overheard someone the other day say that she was written up by her supervisor because she wouldn't yell at her teammates often enough. And I thought, that's a young woman who's in a tough spot because she has a boss who's a tyrant who thinks that the only way she can be a good supervisor is to also be a tyrant. That's horrible, because the boss tyrant needs some leadership training and some personality development and some grow-upness in order to be a good leader. But if she's leading other people and the people she's leading are being taught to yell at their employees, they're not going anywhere except out the door. It's that respect for other people that allows you to realize that we can all live through the same event and have a different experience in it. Perhaps you've been at the scene of an accident, whether it's the forklift that knocks everything over in the grocery store or it's the two cars that crashed at the stop sign. Maybe it's just who burned dinner the other night. But regardless what the incident is, we can all acknowledge the time when we and a spouse, we and a friend, we and a coworker, we and an absolute stranger at the grocery store lived through an event and had a different experience from it. We have different perceptions. We have different ways of coming at that event. We have different understandings of what just took place. And part of that is the filter that we have in our own minds, the way that we perceive the world, the attitude that we approach the world with. In the attitude hack, I talk about Dr. Caroline Leaf's approach to attitude. I love the way she says it. And it has a lot to do with this whole anger management issue, whether we're talking about inanimate objects or stupid people. Stupid things and stupid people both have the same level of frustration, I find, for most of us. But Caroline Leaf says that an attitude is thought plus feeling. So the feeling plus the thought plus the feeling equals attitude, or attitude equals your thought plus your feeling or minus your feeling, right? It's like that 2 plus 3 equals 5. Well, then 3 plus 2 also equals 5, and 5 minus 3 equals 2, and 5 minus 2 equals 3, because they all go together. Attitude is kind of the same way. You don't get an attitude without both thought and feeling, but if you can't manage your thoughts and you can't manage your feelings, your attitude is going to be out of control. Now, the beauty of that is, if you understand that it is your thought plus your feeling that come together to make an attitude, then you also have the ability to change your thought or change your attitude, change your feeling, and come out with a different attitude. If you don't like the attitude you have right now, or you don't like the attitude you're getting from your employees, then change the way they think about something or change the way they feel about something, and you will have a different attitude. It really is, as complicated as that sounds, it really is as simple as that. Whether it's overcoming anger or it's taking time to have an open and honest communication, if it's overcoming the frustration that comes from entitlement, if it's overcoming the frustration that comes from apathy, managing attitudes is really no harder than understanding how people feel about what people think. And if you can change what they think, you can change what they feel. Now, here's the reality in our own lives that we are individually responsible for. We have to understand that we have the ability to choose and the responsibility to choose both what we think and how we feel about it. Now, there will be those moments where we have an emotional reaction to something that's been said or done, and that emotional reaction is, it's like if somebody kicks you in the knee and you're thinking, oh my God, that hurts. Well, if that's your boss who accidentally kicked you in the knee, wouldn't you agree that you're going to take a moment? Yes, you have a feeling, you have a sensation, you have an emotional feeling about it. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's disappointment, maybe it's confusion, but you have a feeling, you have a sensation of pain. But you, as a mature adult, take a moment to think, will I just explode on this person and maybe start punching them in the face for kicking me in the knee, whether it was accidental or otherwise? Will I reflexively react to this moment, or will I grit my teeth and go, it's okay, I know it was an accident? Or do we feel like it's necessary to lecture them? See, that's the moment when the feeling immediately takes over, but we have to choose the thoughts that will follow it. And we have to choose the reaction to those thoughts. Do we think, you did that on purpose? Do we think, I can't believe you just kicked me in the knee? Or do we think, wow, I wish they'd push their chair back a little bit before they tried to get out of it because that was just bad? Or do we think, wow, that's going to leave a bruise and I'm supposed to be in shorts next weekend? All of those thoughts that go through our head, we get to choose the one that we're going to go with, so to speak. Now, here's something that you probably want to know about your brain. The conscious mind moves at about 2,000 bits per second, or in tech talk, 2 megabytes per second. So 2 megabytes of information is what you're consciously thinking about. So if I threw a puzzle at you like 2 plus 2 equals, you would say 4. And 4 plus 4 equals, you would say 8. And 8 plus 8 equals, and you would say 16. And we could play this game all day because you pretty much memorize those numbers. And there would be a point where you had to stop and do the math. Maybe by the time I got to 32 plus 32 equals 64, or 64 plus 64 equals 128, or 128 and 128 is 256. There might be a moment where you go, hang on, I got to do the math on this one. 256 to 512, 512 to 1028, right? There's a moment where you go, okay, hang on, let me think. But for a long period of those 2 plus 2 equals 4, 4, 8, 8, 12, those numbers are just memorized. So they're responsive reactions. And you do that in your brain at about 2 megabytes per second. 2 megabytes per second. That's what you're thinking. But the reason that you can answer 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 8 is 16, 16, 16 is 32, 32 is 64. The reason you can do it so fast is because you memorize them. And because you memorize them, they're now moving in the subconscious brain. How do I know? Because if I do that in a large class, and I've done it dozens of times, 2 plus 2 equals 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 8 is, and then I get to 16, now 16 plus green is, and everybody freaks out. Why? Because no one has memorized 16 plus green. Because it's not a real equation. Some people say 16 green, and I say, no, you're thinking of multiplication. But you can't add a number to a color. It doesn't work that way. Until you assign a numeric value to green, then you have to solve it as an algebraic equation, but you cannot simply do math and add 16 to green. If you're a mathematician and you know a better answer than that, please share it in the comments below. But generally speaking, 16 plus green is a non-factorable equation. Just can't do it. Can't solve it. So here's what happens. 2 plus 2 equals 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 8 is 16 is in the subconscious brain. It's moving at 40 gigabytes per second. And the minute I add 16 plus green, everybody throws on the brakes because they just moved from the subconscious where you've memorized those answers, where you're already in a habit of responding because you already know what's coming next, to you have to stop and think about this. And all of a sudden your conscious process goes from 40 gigabytes per second, which is zooming fast. Most people have the average 16 gigabyte cell phone. If you think about that for a moment, that means I can download your phone 3 times a second with the speed of my subconscious mind, and so can you. Every photo, every app, every email you've ever sent, every website you've ever visited, in 3 seconds. Think about that for a moment. All right, that's what's happening in your mind when you remember. And if those frustrating moments come up, the thoughts come up that oh, he just kicked me. That's 40 gigabytes a second of all of the bad stuff that's ever happened in your life that you're not trying to blame on the person who accidentally kicked you. There's a notion from Scripture, 2 Corinthians 10:5. He says, take every thought captive and beat it into submission. Now, here's what that really means. What he's meaning is all of those thoughts that are rushing in your mind at 40 gigabytes a second, you've got to throw the brakes on for a minute and bring them into the conscious thought at 2,000 or 2 megabytes per second and go, hold up, wait a minute. Put a little love in it. That's a great song by, it's called Love Addict. Can't remember, Family Force 5. Hold up, wait a minute. Take that thought that's moving so fast, grab hold of it for a second, slow down there for a minute, boy, and let's talk about this. Let's rationally decide if the reaction, the natural thought, the first thing that came to my mind when you kicked me, if that's really what I want to come out of my mouth, if that's really the attitude that I want to have. Because I know if Grandma is walking through the grocery store and accidentally hits me with her walker, I'm not going to bop her upside the head. But we all know, and we've seen it on a plane, on a train, at the bus station, in the airport, in the grocery store. If you're just walking along with your cell phone and you're not paying attention, you bump into somebody, they're about to be a fight, right? Because you're all up in their space. Because you made them bump into somebody. You made them drop their phone or spill their coffee because you made me. How many times have you said that? It's when we lose control of the emotions in us and we allow those 40 gigabytes of thoughts that maybe have not been so healthy to express themselves in a moment. They just like a geyser all over the people around us. See, anger management, conflict resolution, is really about taming your mind, the speed of your subconscious mind, to understand that it's not necessary to react to people that way. It's just not. You don't have to treat people the way that you feel right this moment. And you don't have to feel like that. You can change the way you feel as well. It's your choice. And because it's your choice, you get to decide if it's going to be good or it's going to be bad. If it's going to be better, it's your choice. Will you tolerate a toddler throwing a temper tantrum or grandma throwing a temper tantrum? If the answer is, I could get over that, then it shouldn't matter if that's your toddler, your teenager, or your grandmother throwing a temper tantrum. It also shouldn't matter if it's your boss. But if the people around you can't tolerate someone throwing a temper tantrum, then you probably shouldn't throw a temper tantrum. It's really about choosing the thoughts that you're going to have. It really is. Now, that takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of intentionally deciding ahead of time, how will I react when this happens? John Maxwell calls it thinking time, to reflect both of the things that have happened in the past and to reflect for the things that are going to happen in the future. How many of you could raise your hand and say, I know there's going to be a time that somebody is going to close a car door on my finger, knock my drink out of my hand, run over my foot with a shopping cart? I know that time is coming. I know it is. And I'm going to have an answer or a reply when it does. Well, you go through this exercise every day if you're in business. It doesn't matter if you're an employee of someone else, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're unemployed and looking for a job. When someone says to you, so what do? You know as well as I do, you have already rehearsed that in your head a dozen times. You've already decided what you're going to say when they say, what do you do? Maybe you're like me and you have dozens of jobs, dozens of clients. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I'm a leadership coach. I'm a business coach. I help people with social media and platform building and marketing. That's what I do. I host a couple of television shows. I do television interviews. I do on-the-spot interviews on the street. I provide audiovisual services for other media agencies. I do that all over the world. I teach government leaders and I teach in high schools. In fact, I'll be in a high school today. And if I try to answer with one word or one job title, there's no way to do that. So when people ask me, and I'm pretty clear from the environment, from the way that they've asked, that they've already got their own business card in their hand and they say, so what do you do? I know they don't really want an explanation for what I do. What they want is a simple answer from me that they can easily digest in their mind and decide if A, I will do business with them, or B, they get benefit from doing business with me. And usually it's only A that they're concerned about. That's why they already have their card in their hand. So I have already formulated an answer in my mind that's appropriate for that situation. And when they come to me and they say, here's my card, so what do you do? I know they don't want a real answer, and so I usually say, I just talk too much. And they stop dead in their tracks because that's like 16 plus green. It doesn't compute for everything they've already had going through their mind, and they just look at me with a blank stare, and suddenly their card goes down a little bit, and they're like, huh? I talk too much. What do you mean by that? Well, I get paid to talk. Everything I do that generates income has to do with me talking. Except for writing books, but many of those are transcribed from speeches I've already given, so I just talk too much. And they're so confused they don't know what to do next. It's kind of fun. But if I can take the time to do that for a networking meeting, why wouldn't I take time to do that? Same process of thinking through the dialogue. If I say this, what do you think they're going to say? What about the average person? How would anybody else in that environment react? I have a chance to pre-plan. And because I have a chance to pre-plan, I also have a chance to take every thought captive. Of the 40 gigabytes of information that's going to be flying into my mouth, ready to jump out when somebody runs over my foot with a shopping cart, I get to plan the one that's going to be there. My response, my choice, my decision. And it's yours. And if it's my choice and it's my thought and it's my decision, it's also my responsibility and it's yours. It's your responsibility when that feeling comes up to decide the words that will come out of your mouth in reaction to it. And you know as well as I do that sometimes attitude is expressed right here with no words at all. You've seen it. You know what it looks like when a guy's about to pull out a gun on you in road rage. When a woman's about to punch you in the side of your head or slap you with her purse because you cut in front of her at the grocery store or at Starbucks. You know what that looks like. It doesn't even have to come with words. That attitude's whoosh, all over the face, right? Pre-planning those moments. Just like we all do when the wife says, we need to talk. Oh, gosh. All the way home, you'll be thinking about what's she going to say and how am I going to react to that and what did she find and what am I guilty of that I need to be prepared to answer for and what did I do wrong this time? All of those thoughts are going through your head. You're already pre-planning for it. And chances are you're going to have an anxiety attack before you even get home. But you have a chance to pre-plan. And if a soft word turns away wrath, it doesn't matter how angry she is. If you come in with a loving attitude, not a defensive attitude, you're going to change things. If you have a chance to take every thought captive, you have a chance to make a decision about what you'll think and how you'll feel without regard for the other person. If you can control your attitude in everything, which is really what we're supposed to do as leaders and believers, if you will control, not just can, I know you can. It's a will issue. It's a soul issue. Mind, will, and emotions. It's amazing how that works, right? Attitude is a thought, which is your mind, and how you feel, which is your emotions. Your thought and your emotions come together to create an attitude, and yet they're still submitted to that other third part of the human soul, and that's the will. If you don't choose, decide, and act on what you think and how you feel, your attitude's going to be out of control. If you do choose to decide what you think and how you feel, your attitude will be under your control. And they call that self-control. That's very fruitful. I hope today's talk has been worthwhile for you. I hope it's been beneficial to you. I also hope you'll hit that share button down on the bottom and send it to somebody else that could use a little attitude adjustment. And I hope that you'll hit subscribe to make sure that you get all these messages from now on. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scroll down into the text box underneath the description box. There's actually a link there that will take you to the iTunes podcast. Then if you're not up at 6:20 a.m. when I do these every day, then you can just get it in your inbox. And if you don't like podcasts, you don't like the way they fill up the memory on your phone, which is kind of a frustration to me, fill up the memory on your iPad or your iPod or your laptop or whatever device you use, then you can simply subscribe to the email. If you go to Excellent Life Leadership, Excellent Life Leadership is the website. On the blog, right there on the right-hand side, you can just type in your name and email. That's all it takes. Once that goes in there, you'll start receiving every Thursday morning the list of all the content blogs from the day that just has the title in the email. You can choose to watch the video if you want to. But it's a good way to have access and have archives because all of them will be on YouTube. You can go back and get them at any time. If you appreciate what I'm doing, then I appreciate you. And even if you don't appreciate what I'm doing, but you're still here anyway, I really appreciate you. Maybe one day I'll win you over. Thanks for watching. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.